April was a pretty good reading month for me. I ended up reading 5 books, which I honestly thought that I read more than I actually did, but I was reading some pretty long books throughout the month, so it felt like I was reading very consistently, and they were some pretty good books. I'm very excited to talk about them. I haven't been very consistent with making content recently. I've been a little bit MIA, which I really appreciate you guys being patient with me. April has been super busy. One of the reasons why we got a puppy. This is Heidi. She's a brand new addition to our family, and she is a little menace. We've been working on puppy training and potty training and all of the things, and life has been a little bit chaotic with her, but it's very exciting to have a puppy around the house again. So I don't know how filming is going to go, specifically this video. She could be a terror during it, but we're gonna do our best. Maybe she'll take a nap. So I'm gonna go put her in her playpen and see what happens. Be right back.
Oh, you're so cute. I love you so much. You're such a good girl. Okay, you want to take a nap for me? Want to take a nap in my little playpen, please? And don't cry?
Now that those introductions are out of the way, without further ado, let's talk about all of the books that I read in April. It's probably no surprise, but I started the month with my tandem read of Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn, which I think are books 6 and 7 of the Throne of Glass series. So just a reminder, I'm actually rereading the Throne of Glass series for the second time. I read them all about 2 years ago, and I've been wanting to reread them for a while, so I decided at the beginning of this year that that was gonna be kind of my series that I was going through. And I had not done the tandem read last time I read the series, so this is my first time doing a tandem read. And also, I actually listened primarily to the audiobooks of these books. I had the thought that if I read it physically, I was gonna be stuck reading these books nearly the entire month and not be able to get to some other books that I was really looking forward to in April. So I wanted to try doing it as an audiobook. I am not that much of an audiobook listener. I recently did a video talking about how much I hate audiobooks and trying to get over my fear of them. And we were pretty successful there, specifically as it relates to these 2 books. I'm still slightly on the fence about it, but I was actually really surprised by how much I ended up enjoying doing this tandem read as an audiobook. I did finish the last 100 pages physically just because I kind of wanted to do that myself versus listening to the ending as an audiobook. But overall, it was a fun experience. At the end of it, I definitely think that if you are reading Throne of Glass for the first time, you should not do the tandem read. I think reading them separately as your first introduction to these books is definitely the way to go personally. I found that jumping back and forth between the books and between the chapter chunks, it actually made everything go by really, really slowly, which makes sense. They take place in the same timeline. Both these stories are kind of happening at the same time, so you should be able to read them as if it's like these dual stories happening, and that was really fun. But because we are in third person, because we are focusing on so many different characters, when I leave a character in Empire of Storms, it takes me so long to get back to them just because we now have to jump to Tower of Dawn and there's multiple characters in Tower of Dawn, and when we go back to Empire of Storms, we may not be with that original character. So even somebody like Aelin, I felt like I wasn't able to spend a ton of time with her just because of the nature of doing the tandem read. So that was really interesting, and I am glad that I did it this way because I wanted to kind of experience what the tandem read was like. I didn't like it better though. Even Tower of Dawn, I think that a lot of people say that this is their least favorite book in the series, which I disagree with. It's kind of middle of the pack for me, but I still think books 1 and 2 and maybe the prequel are pretty low on the list for me just because the writing is a lot more mediocre than the other books in my opinion. But this book, it does focus on a different set of characters, and so some people were kind of bored by that, or they didn't love focusing on these characters, they wanted to get back to these characters, and I get that, and I did feel that even the first time I was reading this book, that it was kind of hard for me to get into. But once you're into it, I really enjoy the stories that are being told with Kaol and Irene. Nesrin we're focusing on a lot more, and that's fun, and you're able to pick up speed, get momentum with it, and really enjoy the book. But again, because I was doing a tandem read, I felt like I wasn't able to get that momentum, because as soon as I started feeling connected to the characters, or as soon as I started feeling emotionally engaged with the story, I would switch to something else. So it felt a little bit jerky to me and a little bit more difficult to really get into it. Now, all that being said, I still had a great time. I love this story. I'm familiar with the story already, so I think it was maybe easier for me to kind of lock in than it would be if it was my first time, which is really another reason why I would recommend, if you're reading it for the first time, to not do a tandem read. Of course, it all depends on personal preference, but that would kind of be my opinion. As far as rating these books, I am not totally sure what I want to do here, because I do think that the audiobook listening experience kind of was very different for me and changed my perspective on it. Like, I don't think I enjoyed it less. It wasn't as easy for me to emotionally engage all the time. I also found that it was a little bit more difficult to retain information between listening sessions, if you will. When I'm reading something, I feel like I remember the details a lot more vividly and a lot more clearly, whereas with listening to it, I really had to, one, focus as hard as I could, and two, make sure that I'm not doing something that is too distracting for my mind so that I can kind of lock in on listening. Taking walks was mostly what I did. There were a couple other activities that worked pretty well for me, but for the most part, walking is what I did while listening to this book. But again, it feels like a totally different experience than just reading it physically. And so I don't know if I want to stick with my original rating. I think my original rating of Empire of Storms was a 5, and my original rating of Tower of Dawn was like a 3.75 or maybe a 4. Listening to them, I wouldn't put them that high personally. But also, when I physically read the endings of each book, I was instantly kind of back in that emotional spot where I was so invested in what was happening, specifically the ending of Empire of Storms. Oh my gosh, it just is very explosive. So I know that I really enjoy these books. I think that the listening aspect of it made it a little bit harder for me to enjoy them. I just know that the stories are good and I know that I really like them. So I think I'm going to rate Empire of Storms as a 4.5. I am lowering it from my initial read through just because on this second read through of all of the books, as of right now, I'm comparing every book to Heir of Fire because I think that that's the best one so far. I did not enjoy this book as much as I enjoyed Heir of Fire, and Heir of Fire is absolutely a 5-star, 100%. Even Queen of Shadows is more of a 5-star to me than this one, but it's so close, especially with the ending. There's a lot of character development that happens with characters that we met in previous books that we haven't spent a ton of time with. So I did really enjoy this, but it's just not up there with Heir of Fire for me. I didn't cry. I wasn't completely emotionally bent out of shape about it. So I'm going to rate Empire of Storms a 4.5. And Tower of Dawn, I think I'm gonna stay at a 4. It's harder to get into, in my opinion, but once you do get into it, I love the character of Irene. I love everything that happens with Kaol and his story. I'm a little bit more bored with Nesrin's story most of the time, but overall it is very fun once you kind of lock in and get into it. And the politics of the land that they're in is so interesting to me, and I really enjoyed how fleshed out that kingdom felt and that entire world building scenario was. So I definitely enjoyed this as well. I'm gonna say this is a 4 out of 5 stars. So those books I listened to pretty much the entire month of April. While I was reading other physical books, I was listening to Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn. So I started April with that and I ended April with that. But in the meantime, I also read a couple physical books. Obviously, I read Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. This is one of the big romance releases that happened this month that I know everybody was super excited about. I was super excited about it. I read it in like 1 or 2 days and it was a very fun experience. Abby Jimenez and I have an interesting relationship as far as author-reader goes because there are some books that she's written that are god-tier books to me. Just for the Summer, I love that book so much. It was one of my favorite books that I read in 2024. But there's also books that she's written that are some of the most annoying and frustrating books that I've ever read, like the Happy Ever After playlist. That book is so infuriating to me and I can't stand it. And then there's kind of some mediocre mid-tier books for me, like Yours Truly. Yours Truly was the first Abby Jimenez book that I ever read. I think I got it as a book of the month pick and I enjoyed it, but it was kind of meh. It didn't really stick with me. It didn't really make a huge impression on me, but I know that I enjoyed it. And so I've really had a wide spectrum of Abby Jimenez, books that I really didn't like, books that I absolutely loved, and books that are just kind of middle of the road. So I was very curious what Say You'll Remember Me was gonna do. Also because I just thought that the premise of it was gonna be so cute and the characters were gonna be so cute. So I was super excited for this one. So Say You'll Remember Me follows our two main characters, Samantha and Xavier. And at the very beginning of the book, they go on a date. They meet because Samantha brings in this cat that she found to a vet's office, and Xavier is the vet and the owner of the veterinary clinic. And they meet, and it's kind of not a great experience, and they don't get off on the right foot, and Samantha kind of thinks that he's a jerk, and Xavier kind of thinks that Samantha is head in the clouds, sort of dumb, too positive, whatever. So they don't really click right away, but through a series of events, she comes back, he apologizes, they make up, and they go on a date. And that happens very, very early in the book, and it ends up being essentially the best date either of them have ever been on, and basically they're in love at the end of the date. I would say this book is very insta-love in my opinion, which sometimes I really can't stand, but then other times it feels like it's intentional. I think insta-love doesn't work when the author is trying to pretend that it's not insta-love, but if the author's just like, yeah, they're gonna fall in love immediately, then okay, we're on the same page, we can accept it, whatever. I definitely think that this is insta-love, but I think that it was more intended. So they essentially are super into each other, they fall in love, and then at the end of the date, Samantha reveals, hey, I'm actually moving across the country to go live with my mother who has dementia and is deteriorating quickly, and I need to be there to help with her care and with my family, all of that stuff. Xavier's like, wow, I don't know what to say, that was the best date of my life, and now we're going to be separated. They kind of agree, well, we should just part as unlikely friends at this point, which they do, but of course they can't stop thinking about each other, and Xavier flies across the country to go surprise Samantha, and they kind of have a come to Jesus moment where it's like, all right, if we are going to date each other, if we're going to do this long distance relationship thing, how is this going to work? Because Xavier can't leave where he's based because he has his own vet clinic, and he had just opened it pretty recently within the last couple of years. Basically, he is in a ton of debt because he has not right-sided his business yet. They haven't begun making a profit yet. He's the only doctor, so if he's not working, he's not making money. And Samantha is like, I'm not leaving my mom again. I'm not leaving my family or my parents. I'm basically planted here for the indefinite future. So they're just kind of like, all right, I guess we're gonna do long distance for the rest of our lives. And that is basically the entire book, is them in a long distance relationship trying to make it work while Xavier goes into even more debt, flying back and forth across the country, and Samantha is struggling with family issues. And it's just like, honestly, a very stressful book because it is not necessarily forbidden love, but it's just love that doesn't make sense in any world. And it's just never going to work because outside forces are working against them. I did enjoy the relationship between Samantha and Xavier, but like I said, it's absolutely insta-love. There's really nothing wrong with them. There's nothing that they kind of have to work through emotionally as a couple, or any conflict that comes up between them where they have a disagreement or they have an argument and then they have to kind of work with each other and figure it out. Honestly, all of their conflict is outside forces where they are trying to see each other and they can't because of storms, so they can't fly, or they don't have any money, or there's just so many things working against them, and that is kind of the conflict, which is interesting, but also I feel like that made our main relationship feel a little bit shallow because, like I said, they're not really working through anything together, they're just trying to work past outside forces together. So I missed a lot of depth in characters, and I missed a lot of depth in the relationship itself. And also, this was just pure psychological warfare, in my opinion. So many sad things happen in this book, one after another. It's truly tragic, and it made me cry multiple times throughout the book, but then I would get to the end of that cry session and be like, what the heck? I feel very emotionally manipulated. You didn't deserve those feelings from me. You just keep throwing sad things at me, and it's getting too much, and then it made me cry. That's kind of how I felt. I'm curious if anybody else felt the same way. It just was two characters that really can't catch a break at all. And then you get to the end of the book and you're like, well, how the heck is this going to work? I just don't see a world where this actually works. Abby Jimenez has set up so many things to go wrong. How is she going to undo it? And the way that she undoes it feels kind of classic rom-com, not realistic. It's a little bit of a coincidence, red herring at the end, where you're like, okay, great, they made it through. This thing happens for them. again, and now they're able to be together and have a happy ending, but it kind of comes out of nowhere. It's not super satisfying because it honestly doesn't feel like they worked for anything. I think that was a huge issue for me, is that Samantha and Xavier as characters were not driving the plot, they were reacting to the plot as it happens to them. And I think I really like books that are character driven instead of plot driven, and this definitely felt like a plot driven book, which I would say Just for the Summer, the Abby Jimenez book that I really like, is not a plot driven book. It's definitely a character driven book, and the things that happen in the plot are because of decisions that a character makes, and it's really the opposite in this one, and I didn't love that as much. At the end of the book, I was sitting pretty comfortably at a 4-star just because it did get pretty high emotions out of me, but the more time that I spent away from it and the more I was thinking about it, the more I'm just like, I don't think you deserved those emotions from me, Abby Jimenez. I think you took those emotions and you manipulated those emotions. That was a bit of a bummer. I did have a good time. I did enjoy it. I think it is an easy rom-com drama thing. It's not even really that funny. It's just a lot of drama and sadness, but then the main couple is pretty cute and there's some cute animals in it as well. Overall, I think it felt very emotional for me, but when you look at it more rationally, it shouldn't have been so emotional. So I'm actually going to sit at a 3.5 stars for this one, which is another mid-tier Abby Jimenez book. I would say we're trending in sort of an opposite direction with the author now. Even though I loved Just for the Summer, I'm on a bit of a trail of mediocre books or books that are a little bit more frustrating to me. The next book that I read was Beartown by Fredrik Backman. This is my second Fredrik Backman book. The first one that I read was My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry. I know that there are a ton of books of his that are super popular, and Beartown is one of them. General consensus about Beartown, I think, is that it is an amazing book. So I was very curious to see if that would hold up kind of to the hype. So Beartown is about a community, city, village type thing called Beartown. And it really is at its core a hockey town. The entire town, the entire population is really focused on and excited about one thing, which is hockey. And hockey really drives the economy in Beartown, to be honest. Like when hockey is doing well, when the sponsorships are in, when people are really invested in the sport and everything's going well, the economy is pretty booming. When the hockey is doing poorly, when they have a bad team, the sponsorships drop off and literally the entire town loses money and they go into a bit of like a recession. So it's very interesting how the entire town is super affected by this sport, which actually means that everybody is very invested in it. So this is kind of a book that is written in a way where it really feels like a bird's eye view of everything. Compared to the other book that I read of his, My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry, from what I remember of that, we're really, for the most part, in the perspective of our main character, Elsa, who's a 7-year-old girl, and we're seeing the entire plot happen through her eyes. It's not first person, it is still written in third person, but you can still kind of have that first person feeling in third person writing, whereas this, honestly, there was nothing first person about it. But I really liked it, and I think it worked for the story, and the entire way that I was visualizing it was like this bird's eye view of the town, and literally like a camera in the center of the town, and the camera was just panning to different people, and it would go here, and then it would pan over here, and it would zoom in on somebody else, and you would get kind of what's happening with them, and then it would zoom out and it would go back over the town, and then it would zoom in here and you would get another character and what they're up to and what's going on. And visualizing the whole thing that way was actually really fun and made the whole reading experience a lot better. So we're in this town, it's very focused on hockey. Specifically, there's this star player on the hockey team who literally has the weight of the town on his shoulders because he is carrying the weight of the team, and the team is carrying the weight of the town. Again, if they succeed, the town succeeds. So really, everybody is very much focused on this one kid, this one star player, because he's going to take the team to victory and he is going to send the town back into this booming period of prosperity and wealth and whatever. It's crazy. It's a lot of pressure to put on a kid. And something very tragic happens with this kid involved. I'm not going to say what it is. I knew what it was going into it, but because it's not on the back of the book, I don't want to spoil it for anybody. So something big happens involving this kid and involving a couple other kids in the town, it really puts the fate of hockey, the team, and thus the town at stake. And so the whole book is kind of like, how far is the town willing to go to get back into prosperity? Are they willing to cover up something horrible that happened? Are they willing to support this character unto whatever in order to get the town back into the place that it needs to be, in order to have this hockey team survive? It's very interesting. It's very complicated. And it was so well written because it's one of those things where it's like, it doesn't feel like there's really a true antagonist because everybody is flawed. Everybody is doing things that is not great, but also everybody is doing things that is wonderful and really good for the plot and good for the town, good for the story. And so it's just like complicated people being complicated and how they react to something big that happens or something tragic that happens. And that was really interesting. And just overall, I thought the writing style was so good. I was very, very invested in this. I came out of it being like, hey, I think that I like hockey now. I think I want to be a hockey person. I'm not a hockey person, but that's how gripping it was. It made me care about hockey for a second. Again, I think the writing was just so good. Comparing it to the other book that I read of his, where again, it's from the perspective of a 7-year-old child, I feel like he changes his writing style to kind of match the type of book that he's writing. So in My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry, it feels a lot like a child is narrating things. It feels like a very unique writing style, even just the way that everything is presented, the way that things are described. It felt a little bit more interesting and unique, but more pertaining to a child as the main character. Whereas this, it's kind of a little bit more straightforward. It's a little bit more blunt. It's definitely more, like I said, bird's eye view. And that definitely helped with this type of story, especially when you're trying to create an entire town that feels like a character itself. It's like you focus on all of these different micro characters to build the big character of Beartown. And I think it was accomplished really well. I think he did it really, really well. And I absolutely loved it. This was a 5-star for me. I was so into it. This is actually part of a trilogy. There's 2 other books that come after this. And I am curious if anybody has read the complete trilogy and if they would recommend reading the other 2 books, because this feels like a complete story to me. I got to the end of it and I had no interest in moving on. There wasn't something that was left unresolved or a cliffhanger or something frustrating where it's like, oh my gosh, I have to read the next book. I didn't feel that, not in a bad way, just like in a, hey, that was a good conclusion and I feel satisfied right now. So I would love to know if anybody would recommend reading those other 2 books or if you feel like it's better to just stop at the first one. But Beartown was definitely a 5-star for me, and I'm so excited to continue reading more of this author's books. And then the last book that I read in April, also probably no surprise because I think a lot of people are reading this book in April, Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. This is one of my absolutely most anticipated books of the entire year. I love Emily Henry as an author. I really enjoy her writing style. She is the first one that really got me into romance books. I read Beach Read because it was a book of the month pick many, many years ago. And that was truly the first like adult romance book that I ever read and kind of introduced me to the genre as a whole. So I definitely have a soft spot in my heart for Emily Henry. There are some books of hers that I don't love, but then there are other books that are just totally 5 stars. Based on the synopsis of this, when I first read it, I predicted that it was going to be easily one of my favorite Emily Henry books, and spoiler alert, it definitely is. It lived up to my own personal hype. I actually don't know what other people are saying about this yet, so I feel currently uninfluenced. I'm just gonna give my unfiltered thoughts on it, and it could be aligned with other people. It might not be. I'm not 100% sure, but let's just dive into it. So this focuses on our 2 main characters, Alice and Hayden, and they are both writers, more like journalists. Alice kind of works for a website and does one-off pieces on people or things, and Hayden is a Pulitzer Prize winner. He is a lot more famous. He's a lot more successful, and he wrote a book on a celebrity that took him like 4 years to write it, and it was just kind of this really big deal, and he's just like in a much better spot than Alice. But Alice is very, very positive. She has a bright, bubbly personality. Hayden is very grumpy. This is like one of the truest examples of grumpy sunshine that I have ever seen. And I think it was done actually really well because Alice wasn't annoying. She was very self-aware with how positive she is and how bubbly she is. It was her making a decision to look at the world a certain way and not kind of being an airhead or unaware of it. I feel like a lot of grumpy sunshine stuff, whoever is the sunshine is naive in a lot of ways, and I don't think Alice came across that way to me. I think she came across actually more mature because she had been through things with her family. She had experienced trauma and issues and then come out the other side and made a very conscious decision that she is going to be a positive person. And I really enjoyed that about her, and it felt consistent all the way through the book. Whereas Hayden is kind of the same but the opposite, where he's experienced things in his life and he's sort of come out the other side and decided to be a realist. Not necessarily a pessimist, but it just comes off a little bit more guarded, a little bit more grumpy. I also thought that he was a very realistic depiction of it because he wasn't necessarily grumpy just for the sake of being grumpy. It was just like, this is my personality. I'm more reserved, I'm more introverted. And because of things that have happened to me before, this is how I'm gonna see the world and how I'm gonna react to things. And putting them together was very, very fun. So the reason that they come together is because they both find themselves on this tiny island in Georgia, and they are competing against each other to be the person that gets to write this memoir or biography on this old starlet named Margaret Ives. Margaret Ives is kind of like an Evelyn Hugo character in this book, but maybe not as tragic and intense. She kind of comes from this old money, huge family, this media conglomerate family that really owned all of the tabloids and newspapers of the time that would report on celebrities, and they were just literally like the richest people in the world, but all of this stuff happened tragically with her, and she has been completely disappearing for 20 years. Nobody even knew if she was still alive, but Hayden and Margaret kind of find her and want to tell her story and want to write a book about her. And Margaret is like, well, I don't know which one I'm gonna choose. So why don't I spend a month with each of you, and you can split the week in half, and you can do interviews with me, and then at the end of the month you can give your pitches for the books, and I will choose which person I want to write my book. So we've got a little competitive nature in there, which is fun. And Margaret herself, I just really, really loved the character of her. Again, it was kind of like an Evelyn Hugo character, but I just liked her more, just personality-wise. And it was really interesting how the interviews would go, and this story itself was very much split in half. We have Alice and Hayden's story, and then we have Margaret's story of everything that she went through living in Hollywood, living in this rich family, and the mystery surrounding her family and everything that happened. This book is a romance book, but it's also kind of a mystery, and that was very exciting and very different to read from Emily Henry. And in a lot of ways, it read a little bit more like a literary fiction. It definitely is romance heavy. There's a lot of romance in it, and I thought the romance was done well, but I also felt like it was not primarily romance. So Hayden and Alice are interviewing Margaret, and they're trying to get all of the details of her story within this 1 month period to be able to pitch something to her to be chosen to be the writer. And it kind of becomes very clear that Margaret is A, hiding things from both of them, not telling them the whole truth, or B, just straight up lying to them. So it's fun to see both Hayden and Alice really put their detective hats on and try to figure out what the real story of Margaret Ives is, while also sort of falling for each other and the complications that come with that, because Hayden is very hyper aware that, one, he's more qualified than Alice, maybe not a better writer on paper, but his accolades definitely show that he is a more successful and a better writer. And so he is very hyper aware of this and doesn't want to enter into a relationship with Alice because he thinks he's going to get the job and he doesn't want her to resent him, which kind of shows that realism side to Hayden, where he's just like, on paper, it's going to be me. I'm going to win this pitch. So I don't want you to resent me if we get into a relationship. Whereas Alice over here is like, well, that's very arrogant of you to say. I don't know. The dynamic was just really fun, and I really liked how it all ended up, and I loved the mystery and the story that we were getting with Margaret. It was very refreshing to kind of be able to jump between those different timelines and those different stories, and I just really, really enjoyed it. I think that there is a little bit of insta-love going on with this as well. Definitely insta-attraction, but then once they kind of start their relationship and once they really kind of develop a romantic connection, it does feel a bit like insta-love, but not in a way that was annoying to me. And I'm gonna try to explain this in a way that makes sense, but the whole time it didn't feel annoying to me because these are grown adults. They are in their early 30s, Hayden's in his mid 30s, and at that point they're both single, they're both both pretty successful in their careers. They've both been through a lot that has matured them and has prepared them for life. And it just kind of felt more of a, hey, let's not waste time, and less of an insta love. It was just like two grown adults that are like, I'm attracted to you, you're attracted to me, let's try this out. And then realizing that they actually are really, really into each other. And so that didn't bother me that they fell in love so quickly. And also because they do go through conflicts. They go through issues together that they kind of have to work out with each other, where they mess up or one of them makes a bad decision and they have to like really work through that and process that together as a couple, versus Say You'll Remember Me, where nothing actually really tears this couple apart and they're always just perfect even though the world is falling apart around them. This is kind of the opposite, where they actually both have it really good right now, but there are still things that they need to work through, and I think they do it in a good, mature, and realistic way, while also having the little dash of whimsy, because this is a rom-com romance book and it should be a little bit whimsical in my opinion. Overall, I really, really enjoyed this. Definitely a 5-star. I was hoping it was going to be a 5-star. I hyped it up a lot for myself. I very purposefully didn't look at what anybody else was saying about the book, just because I wanted to be uninfluenced. I wanted to go into it just my pure opinion, and I really, really enjoyed it. I don't think that this is my favorite Emily Henry book, but maybe it is. But I don't know. I'm not ready to make that decision yet. Right now, I think my favorite is Happy Place. I also really like Happy Place because it doesn't just feel like a pure romance book. Even though it kind of centers around a romance, it more centers around a group of people that are really just trying to figure each other out. And then my third favorite book is Beach Read. And Beach Read also feels a lot like Great Big Beautiful Life because they're doing other things. There's a little bit of a competition going on. They're solving a little bit of a mystery, and I really enjoy that as well. So there's kind of a common theme going on with my favorite Emily Henry books, where it's not actually super, super focused on the romance, and it's just kind of like a good character study, and maybe there's a mystery involved or something else involved. So overall, maybe I'll talk about my official ranking of Emily Henry books again soon, but this is definitely sitting at a 5-star for me. I really, really loved it. And there you go. Those are the 5 books that I read in April. Again, it felt like I actually read more than 5 books, even though I clearly didn't. And I think it was because I was listening to these audiobooks literally the entire month of April. So it just felt like I was always reading. And then I got to the end of the month, I was like, oh, I only read 5 books, but not in a bad way, just in a way that was like, that felt like a really good, solid month where I was just reading consistently or listening to a book consistently, and I was able to get some good physical books in. And also, these books rated pretty highly. Obviously, Say You'll Remember Me was the lowest rated. I'm sitting at a 3.5 for that one, but even when I finished Say You'll Remember Me, I thought I liked it a lot more than I did. I still do really like it. I feel like I'm being a little bit harsh on Say You'll Remember Me. It's just because I wanted to like it so much, and I was just a little bit annoyed by the emotional manipulation. But overall, it was a very fun time. It was a very good month, and I'm very excited for what May is going to bring. We are going straight into Kingdom of Ash, and that is going to be a tough one for sure. I don't think I'm gonna listen to it. I may listen to a little bit of it, but I think I really want the full emotions that come from reading that book physically, because it's just so intense and I want to give it its absolute best shot possible. So I'm excited to finish that. Frederick Backman has another book coming out this month. I think it's called My Friends, and I'm very, very excited to read that as well. So I think May is just going to be a fun month. So let me know what you read in April, if you read any of these books, if we have similar opinions, or what you're looking forward to reading in May. As always, thank you so much for joining and hanging out with me on this corner of the internet, and thank you for your patience as I've been a little bit slower making videos and making content, but I really appreciate it, and I'm excited to get back into it. And we will see you next time.